Oh yeah, welcome to Nacht Waffen pilot. Oh God, I didn't even move the screen. Did I? No, I didn't. Ah man, how y'all doing? All right, guess what? I've got to make a quick announcement to let people know where they stand in this wonderful world we call humanity. Shit and syphilis. It's a letter S is somewhere in between. Somebody better find your ass out. Talking about Joseph Powell is a no-no. Talking about my host is a no-no. Talking about their guest is a no-no. Yes, you can talk all you want in the background. Yeah. But you bring the shit open and it comes to me, we're going to have an issue. I mean, you know I just finished completely, utterly destroying L&M Radio Network. And it felt good. So I guess you want me to come your direction. Also, for that person, weren't you with this guy over here at one point in time? And, you know, cause he dumped your ass? Dumped? You gonna throw, throw dirt on him? And, hot grits and stuff? Talk shit about him? You know who you are. I ain't gonna call your name out unless my man wants to say your name. I mean, Joseph is cool. I mean, he's down with me, and people want to say he's a fraud. That certain person trying to spread the word, you know what I'm saying? Spread the word. Well, I'm going to spread some word for you. Do you want to be next? Do you really want to be next? Don't you want to go to a conference? Do you really want to be next? Do you want to go to, talk, tell your story, whatever? Do you want to be next? Fuck with Joseph, fuck with Penny. You will be next. I guarantee it. Now, hey guys, back to the show. I don't play. I'm sorry. I'm in a good mood. Let me just drop my beautiful picture off the screen because don't want to look too cute for everybody. I gotta look like me. And right now we have the Nacht Waffen pilot with Penny Bradley. And if that person wants to play, I'm ready to play. Enjoy yourself, Penny. You know I'm being very nice at this point. Because normally I just go ahead and start slamming in person. Go ahead.
Welcome to Nacht Waffen pilot. Welcome, Joseph. He's been on our show before. He has served in Solar Warden and Nacht Waffen, and I have memories of him in Nacht Waffen. The group that we have been working together with has memories of me in Solar Warden, but I don't remember them there. I have memories of Nacht Waffen and Kruger. So we've covered a lot of territory with Joseph in the first 3 interviews. So I'm not sure what he wants to talk about today, but welcome, Joseph.
Hello. Well, I mean, I have some newer memories with some other altars and stuff. I believe that they were in Nacht Waffen, but a different group. And I mean, I have like I don't know, so we covered Solar Warden and Nacht Waffen. I can talk about a bunch of different ones. I think we covered Project Ibis a little.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, like in the last interview, I touched on it, for one of my altars and stuff. Like I have memories of that, just different things that happened with that. I didn't know, like, am I able to like share photos that I put together, like stuff that I put together on here, or
primarily on radio, so the radio people won't be able to see them.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, never mind then on that end. But yeah, I mean, I've been able to like put different photos together that I posted in one of the major private groups. And
yeah, I remember seeing those. Some of those look pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just like I take pieces of different things and put them together. But I mean, majorly, it's like people see them and they're like, "Yeah, I remember that location." So, I mean, I don't understand the whole situation that's going on other than that. But anyways, I don't know, which group did you want to discuss?
Well, if you have memories of new altars, you've been pretty much in depth of it, of anything you've brought up before. We talked about you in the program where you ended up with taking out the Satanist, and about you serving on the same ship with me,
Mm-hmm.
and about your interdimensional memories. So I don't think you've really talked a lot about Solar Warden or Project IBIS, or any of those.
Okay. I mean, I can go into a little more about Pindar if you want, before we start on the other factions.
Well,
I have.
going into Pindar tends to be really triggering for me.
Okay.
If it's all right, I'd like to skip that.
Okay. I understand. Trust me, it triggers a lot of people. Alrighty. Let's see. I can talk about the Merchant Marine fleet a little.
Okay.
So after I was returned by Nacht Waffen, one of the craft, right, that dropped me off, I returned back in the, like, frozen where I was trying to run from the ship itself into the trailer, you know, that I lived in, because I was like highly scared. And I remember like running, and like as I just started back at running, even though I was stopped mentally, you know. So it's like I almost tripped over myself trying to run, but I can feel like a laughter coming, like a emotional laughter coming from the ship as I was running away, like it was funny to them, you know. Just the emotional feeling that I got from it. And I ran into the trailer that I lived in, and I like ran up the little stairs on the right hand side and like grabbed my blanket and hid under it, you know, and started like crying, you know, because I was scared. And I was hoping that that might stop whatever was happening, you know.
Like a blanket's going to stop them if they want
right
you.
Right, like at that point I didn't understand fully what was going on, you know. And I just tried to, like, I think I passed out after a while, just like bawling my eyes out. And I ended up passing out and waking up in the middle of the night. And I don't know how many times I may have gotten taken at that point. But I know that it was dark by the time I woke up, you know, and like my eyes hurt because I was crying so much, and you know my heart was racing and stuff still, even though I woke back up and stuff. And over the course of like that week, you know, it was like I started, you know, trying to get back to normal for the most part, you know, and trying to figure out what happened. Um, but I had a point where I walked outside again, and I think it might have been at nighttime from what I recall. And I got picked up by a ship. Um, and this ship that picked me up had one of my twin sons that was in Solar Warden. Okay. And he had picked me up. He basically got a hold of my activation codes, and I don't know how he did. Later on, like, he got in trouble for it. Like, he got arrested um, by the admiral that was on the ship that I served on as John. Um, but he had picked me up, and he started conversating with me. Like, he took me on the ship. I woke up on the ship, and it was like a small craft. But we started conversating about stuff, and he was like, you know, started calling me dad and stuff. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you on about? You know, because I didn't know who he was. And he started explaining stuff to me, and then he tried to use my activation codes, and it was like a series of numbers, and then my name John, and then like he didn't understand how to activate me either. Like he had written this whole thing down on a piece of paper. So like he stole this information somehow. I don't know what place he was working in, you know, where he was able to get a hold of this information. And
they try to keep that information very hush hush.
Yeah, and like while we were talking, what I didn't know is that he was already going to the location that he was picking me up to go to. Like, I thought we were still like, I thought I was just in some kind of building or something at that point. But we started discussing back and forth like what was going on, and then he tried to use my activation codes, and like my alter John was like slightly coming to the surface in the process of doing that, but he wasn't doing it properly. And John actually knows how his activation codes worked. So he literally took the paper, because I was like shifting back and forth between me and this alter John. And I'm like, John like took the paper from him, was like, that's not how you do it. Like, here. And like literally he was like, you read off the numbers. He's like, read off da 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 da, and then you say my name, and then you say activate. And he was like, he's like, okay. And he's like, he handed it back. He's like, now read it off, And so he read off my activation codes and activated me. And when he did that, um, my alter John just fully came out, and like I just took a back seat, and it was like,
do you have memories of it too, or were you completely replaced?
No, it was like I took a back seat and watched everything that happened. But
Okay.
it was like, it felt like we were both in it together, and like symbiosis in a sense, but I couldn't really control anything for the most part, but I had these memories.
Yeah, I tend to call that piggybacking, because
Yeah.
you're there, you're witnessing, you're part of the action, but you have no actual ability to influence anything.
Yeah. And like this alter knew about other alters too. So,
Yeah,
that was
some of them
weird to me.
do.
Yeah. Like having these memories now versus when it was going down, and understanding more now than when it was happening. I was like, what's going on? Because I was like 12 or 14 at the time. So I had this grown
Okay.
man calling me dad. Like he was in his like 25 or 30s. He was like in his prime age that they normally keep you in. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? I'm like, what? And once John came out and he started talking to him, he was basically explaining, like he started explaining that his wife and children were on a planet that was being enslaved. So John had sat there and was like, what are you talking about? Like, and at that point, John has more of a moral compass than the rest of them. So like when
Yeah.
he's
My
not.
Penny has more of a moral, ethical compass than the rest.
Yeah. So it's like when things aren't right by his moral basis, like he'll stand up against it, depending on the circumstance. Like if it's just him, like the way his son explained it, it was just him and like one other person, and he was like, you want to take on a group that are enslaving an entire planet, and he was like, are you crazy? Like, and
Yeah.
he was like, we can't do this like this. Like what are you doing? And he started to explain that he was basically doing this on his own, and like he had a father-in-law that had his own ship and stuff. Like this was, I think there
So
was like
this
one or
was
two
going to
ships.
be two ships against a group that's enslaving an entire planet.
Yeah.
And your John Alter is going,
Yeah. I'm like, dude, are
this,
you?
the logistics of this are impossible. You're going to be destroyed.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just like, I think because he's heard, like as he was growing up, he heard about the things that I did on the ship, and, because I was an officer, but I like being an officer, I understand tactics and what to do and what not to do, you know,
Yeah.
going up against an entire group trying to enslave people is like not a smart move when you're only got like two ships and barely any weaponry. So
Yeah, that's what we call a suicide mission.
exactly, and that's exactly what he basically told him. That's a suicide mission. But he was like, so John tried to explain to him that it wasn't going to work, and then all of a sudden he heard a voice from like caddy corner, because so it was like I was facing him and he was facing me, and we were at the front of the deck of the ship where we can look out and stuff. And on the caddy corner on the right hand side there was a small room that you could go into. It was the size of a cleaning closet, for instance, at a school,
Okay.
where you keep all your cleaning supplies first, but it wasn't for cleaning supplies. And he heard a voice say, he's not going to help us, just put him back, whatever, we'll have to do this on our own, and so he was like, "Who's that?" And he recognized the voice, but it was like a lot different than what he remembered, And so he walked over, and this voice was like, "No, don't come any closer," you know. And he was like, "What? What do you mean? Like, wait a minute!" Like, and he started walking over, and he ended up like barely turning the corner, and he saw this individual. Like, I'm not going to state her name publicly, because I've already stated I'm not going to in other interviews I've done.
Okay.
And she was a lot older than he remembered, and she was embarrassed about that. Like this individual on her altar was really embarrassed about that for some reason, and he didn't really care. He was just happy to see her. And like so he started talking to her, and they were like, he started saying like, does our son actually know like who I am and what I've really done, and work, and how I've worked in different programs, for like Nacht Waffen, and like he didn't really say Nacht Waffen, but he used like the Germans and all this other stuff,
Yeah.
because from his perspective, he was taught and told that they were that the German faction were just Nazis, period. Working for Solar Warden.
Yeah,
So
that's the common Solar Warden belief.
yeah, and I mean, I would say for like my perspective, being here on Earth and like reading up history and the way that they wear their stuff and all that, like for the most part, they still wear a lot of that stuff or like represent that stuff, even though it's more heritage based, I guess. So like
Mhm.
from like I could understand why, like, if you were coming from Earth, like you would actually believe it full blown.
Well, having done at least 91 60 and backs with the Germans, it's that the Nazi group is in their ancient history. It's
Hmm.
not relevant to who they are today, but the uniforms and insignias are their traditional markings.
Yeah.
And they were their traditional markings before the Nazis and after. The Nazis were only a 20-year. Americans on Earth don't understand that.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest mind fuck that I have to deal with talking about the Germans in space to Americans is Nazis. And that was a 20-year period in their history that even the ones on Earth are embarrassed about.
Hmm.
And it's getting past that propaganda is the biggest problem that I have, because I'm talking about real people in real 3D ships in real 3D space. And everybody, you hear the word German and they go into this mindset, and you can't change their mind with a baseball bat.
Hmm. I mean,
And
like seeing the things that you see in history, and then like knowing that they got off the planet. I mean, that is a scary thought for most people. I mean,
well,
but
from
either
their
way.
point of view, they were being genocided over and over and over again, and the only way to survive was to leave the planet.
Mhm.
So, from what I know of their history out there, they have left all other humans alone
Mhm.
out there, haven't they?
I mean, I know that they have slavery issues with using humans,
Everybody
and
out
yeah,
there has
exactly.
slavery
And
issues.
I've admitted that like 100%, like
It's
every fact.
not like they're the only ones.
Yeah.
Everybody, including the beloved Solar Warden, has slavery issues. All of the
I mean,
ships are manned
I
by
know,
kidnapped children.
yeah, I know for a fact that they take people at night, take their DNA, clone them. Whether they use those individuals, not. I mean, they do, obviously, common sense is, but I mean the masses that they clone. They normally don't take their souls. They just use, if they're trying to do an operation, there's some things where they do use the originals. So it's like a grown
Mhm.
adult body with a baby in it.
Exactly.
and that was done in one of the operations. Like I remember the whole thing, and I remember being told that I was in a clone body by the person that was my commanding at the time. Was in command of the unit, the 3-man unit that we were in. So
all of the American factions use your original self shoved into possessing
yes, your soul, yes.
a clone.
Mm-hmm.
So
and then they use your activation codes.
You are a squatter in your de facto identical twin. You're possessing your sibling. And that is what all of the American factions do. The Germans just keep regenerating your real body.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's something I want to clear up, because I've noticed that there's been some misunderstanding, like dealing with killing my alters and stuff, like in the community. Because like when I say it, I think people, I didn't elaborate properly. So what I've stated is that, you know, me personally, I'm going to do my best to integrate as many alters as I possibly can to become completely whole again, right? And I have alters that are still in space that are in clone bodies. So when I state that, you know, once the stuff happens and everything, that I'm going to be killing my alters, what I'm stating is I'm going to be killing the clones that they inhabit. So those alters will be returning back to me after they die.
Once the clone dies, you return back to your natural born body.
It is a painful process when you kill an alter. And it's like there is a time dilation, but you feel the pain of however you kill them, and you get the memories of it as you've already been standing right there doing it yourself. So like I've been through that. It's a pretty brutal process, and it's quite painful. And you know, hopefully you're not in the middle of a battle when it happens, because you get disoriented for a few. In the process of it. And I remember that in other timelines, but I just wanted to clarify that, because I think people, when I said I'm going to kill my alters, that they just think that I'm going to outright try to like destroy the soul shard. Later on, when everything's said and done, eventually they will all die with me. But that is neither here nor there in this conversation. So I just wanted to clarify that.
If you have a soul shard that's still alive out there, it may not die when you do here.
Okay.
It may continue on. I have a soul shard that is sitting in a cyborg shuttling a ship back and forth between the moon and Mars. And that cyborg has a 600-year lifespan.
See, that's something that I don't think I ever covered.
It's going to be out there functioning long after I'm dead in this body. But because it's in a time loop within our timeline, but it's in a loop where that when that body is finally destroyed, that soul shard will return back to wherever I am. And if I'm dead at the time, it will die then.
Yeah, like I remember, like when I'm in my my real body, I remember actually integrating those soul shards too, from past lives that I had. So
I've reintegrated 32 of them so far.
Yeah, so I mean that, like not in this lifetime, but past lives that I went into, I know that some of them had fractured, you know, because I like I've already covered. I don't know if it was on your show, but
not on my show.
Okay, like when you're in other, like most of the bloodlines, the original fracturing that they did, the old school fracturing, was like more violent. I mean, it still is violent, don't get me wrong, but I mean, they found easier ways to do it.
Mine was pretty damn violent. So
yes. Like they found easier ways to do it, but they'll still do it rudimentary. And like they did it rudimentary in some of the past lives that I had. So I had alters even in those lifetimes. Because normally you have to come, from what I remember, you have to go through bloodlines, because you have to have some connection to your genetics. Not that it has to be 100%.
Your soul has to have some connection through DNA to be able to anchor in your body. And they are choosing people. Okay. The best explanation I came up with was when you have a royal, say you have the king of this, the Holy Roman Emperor in Austria-Prussia 400 years ago. We'll just pick one at random. Married, has one son to replace him and a spare. Okay? They continue to have children. And those children will marry with the ruler's kids from other nations. And you get to a point where you have more kids than you have positions. And if that's a boy, they will train him in a trade. And instead of being a royal, he will become a merchant class. Now, the descendants of those kids, most of them don't know that they're bloodline. Most of them are living a normal Homo sapien experience, and they don't know why they're being abducted for space, but they are still bloodline because they were descended from, say, the 10th kid of the king.
Yeah. Plus, it depends on like how strong that blood. From what I recall, it depends on how strong that bloodline is, how close it is to that original bloodline. Depends on how much abilities you have when you come through, how powerful your abilities can become.
And that's what they're looking for. Now,
yes.
Because they had modified my DNA, which I know your altar I served with really hated that that was true.
That's okay. He was too. So I guess it,
Yeah, but I had a, I guess you would say a stronger soul was able to hook into this body. So I had more abilities than most. Because trust me, not everybody in any of these programs is able to do half the stuff that I've pulled off. So, and when I'm pissed, I'm dangerous. And Joseph can testify to that.
It's like it. Oh man, that's why I wanted to share photos, because like I have one of me like in that tank on the ship, like that I put together. I remember like, yeah, I'm not gonna go into that. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah, well,
so,
at least you know that the me here is not violent.
I mean, you weren't actually violent even there. I mean, you were pretty passive aggressive, and you normally didn't like to enact violence unless you were ordered to. So most of the stuff you ever did on like with with that altar on that ship, you either did it under orders or unwillingly anyway. So whatever it was, I mean, your major thing was just helping people, from what I recall. Like, you didn't take a side other than keeping your people alive.
My major thing was, my job was to take the ship into hyperspace and bring it out at the assigned coordinates with everybody okay.
And I remember, oh man, like I remember us going through. So I watched an interview you did, and it triggered memories of when you go to the fourth dimension to travel, and how you can run into those things where there's entities involved. And I remember that altar giving you like an order to like go through one of them so that we could get there early to whatever location we were going to. And I remember this ghost being it was like some feminine ghost being on the fucking ship, like fucking with me for almost the entire trip, to the point I came to you and I was like, I told you to take us out of the fourth dimension. I was like, I told you, and you were like, but we're not going to get there on time. And I was like, it's a fucking order, because this being was just fucking with me non-stop and fucking with the whole crew.
You learned your lesson, didn't you?
Oh yeah, man.
I was go through them.
Yes, and I mean, he was like, well, we'll get there early and then we could do whatever we're gonna do. And then like after that happened, he was like, fuck it, go around. Like, but I remember like coming to you and you were like, but
go around things.
yeah, I just remember you saying like we shouldn't do that, and and you were like, and I was like, just go through it. We're gonna get there early, and I just remember that it was so crazy remembering that after watching that video that you did with one of the individuals that interviewed you. It was a trip to have that recall in the process of that conversation, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, there are reasons that we have orders to not do certain things, and it's because there are consequences. And actually, just having an entity on the ship was one of the milder consequences.
yeah, I mean, I remember like most of the crew going crazy in the process. They were just
Yeah,
like,
they will.
it was insane to go through and
Yeah.
have memories of going through it. That was even crazier, is like having that flash through my head, and I'm like, whoa, I'm like, definitely avoid that if that ever happens.
Yeah, you don't do those things. I mean, you go into another dimension and you pass through a being there and you don't expect them to be upset. Come on. You're invading their world, shooting through the middle of them and expect them to just go, oh, not
They're like,
having it.
hey, who are you?
Yeah. Daryl's cracking up,
It's like I think the only thing I can equate it to is like what's that one ghost movie? I can't remember the name of it. With the little kid that died and like that house that they had, and they haunted the house. It was some kind of cartoon. It was from Disney. I can't remember, but it was like the mindset of that was basically like how I felt like being in those memories of them messing with us.
Well, I have a lot of memories of taking ships through hyperspace. And most people hear hyperspace and they don't realize that it's fourth dimension, which is the land of the ghosts. And if you stop there, everybody in the ship dies because you're in the land of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
And
It was like,
this
I
is
think they,
what you're traveling through to get from point A at this time to point B at that time.
it's like seeing all these people say that they want to go to the 4D. I'm like, do you even what?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm from the fourth dimension. Oh, you're dead, huh?
Just like these people, I feel bad because it's like there's these beings that are taking advantage of them, and then they come out and start saying stupid shit, thinking that that's what's gonna, that's where they're from and all this other stuff. It's like they don't grasp like what they're really talking about. So I'm like,
I listen to a lot of people who are out there talking and talking and talking, and I was plugged into the computer. The computer did the math, but it was my psi ability that took the ship into hyperspace. So I have full dimensional awareness.
mm-hmm.
And then I listen to these people talk about these other dimensions, and I'm going, they're pulling it out of their ass. They have no idea what they're talking about. And then they tell me that there's something wrong with me because I try to keep the conversation to 3D physical reality. It's because they can't function with hyperdimensional anything because they really don't understand. They are thinking that everything's spirit, and it isn't. When you're there, it's physical, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That being that was on the ship was very physical because we were in that realm.
Very physical.
When you are in a dimension and you are exactly on frequency, which you have to be to do hyperspace travel.
I mean, they could go through the ship and stuff, but yeah.
It's very physical. And people don't understand that. They think, oh, you're going to be in 6D. That means that everything is all light and everything is all holy. And if you're in negative 6D, and yes, there is one, that everything's all evil. Wrong. everything everywhere is a mix of both. And it's just humans that are assigning all this bullshit that isn't real.
It's like you've said in the past, in other interviews, you can't have good without bad. You can't have bad without good. Like it's not going to just disappear. Like even with the stuff I've talked about, that doesn't mean that the common individual isn't going to still steal candy bars and shit on the planet, or whatever to survive. Like it's, if you remove a darker threat that shouldn't be here in the first place, doesn't mean that evil isn't going to exist still. That's not how how it works. But I mean, back to what I was getting at, so it's like,
to finish off that idea.
Oh yeah, sorry.
This universe in all of its levels is a 50-50 blend between good and evil, between what it boils down to is a balance between electrical fields and magnetic fields. And at that level, they literally morph from one to the other and back. And it's always at a 50-50 balance. And that is what this entire universe is based on. And if you ever break that 50-50 for one side to win over the other, everything collapses. And so all of these people that are like, the light's going to win. Oh, so you want to self-destruct. I mean,
you would have to kill everything that's evil. I mean, and that's going to be pretty hard. And
no,
I mean,
they don't. They even if they shift it to 40-60, is still going to collapse because it's based on the 50-50 balance, that the opposing forces are in balance. And if you break that balance, the illusion of reality dissipates.
Yeah,
everything
I'm just talking from their perspective. That's their mindset, that we're just going to kill everything that's evil, but it's like at that purity test there ain't going to be very much left, even if it wasn't going to collapse. So
yeah.
it's a pretty insane measure in itself. But
both sides are fighting to win. The darkness understands that it will bring the dissolving of reality. The darkness understands that. It's all of these light workers that think they're going to have just light and nothing else. And I'm like, no. So, yeah.
I mean, I like the existence of 3D. Like, I don't want to see it destroyed. So,
thank you. That's what
I'm not saying it's great, but
it may be illusion, but it feels pretty real here.
Imagine being stuck in a ball in 4D, and then like the only interaction you get is when somebody goes through your shit. I mean, like that wouldn't be fun at all. So
or when you bounce into somebody's shit.
It's like, and it's like they're crazy, so they're gonna try to make you crazy, thinking they're normal. So it's like that's just the way I don't know. It's whatever, but
each frequency node is what people here call a dimension. And each frequency node is fully physical on its own node. And the in-between stuff gets iffy. That's when you start seeing things like shadow people, is because you have drifted in between the nodes. And so you're seeing both. And depending on how close you are to that other node, how physical they appear. And I get people, I keep seeing these black people that come through my wall. They're shadow people and they have black eyes and they're, and I'm like, so you're shifting frequencies.
Yeah, I have that happen nonstop now. It's creepy.
You are invading their frequency. That's all.
And they watch you.
They see you the same way, and you're freaking them out as much as they're freaking you out. That's all that's happening.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's like, out of everything I'm dealing with, that's like the freakiest thing that I'm going through, is just like dealing with that. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, not to mention just
They are just the inhabitants of the next node.
Yeah. And it's
They're,
just,
they're not evil. They're not good. They're just the people that live there.
I mean, if they were evil, I mean, they would really mess with you, right? Like,
if they were evil,
they would attempt to kill you.
You would know.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I don't know. Anyways, that was just a weird little thing that I remembered. And thank you
Yeah.
for that information, that public information. That really helped.
Yeah, I'm sort of scatterbrained today. Sorry, I'm interrupting you a lot.
Well, that's all good. You know, I mean, your interruptions come with information, so it's not like it's, you know, ramblings of insanity. I guess, you know, it's real information. So,
Thank you.
so it's like, anyways, I walked, and I started talking to this individual, this woman, and, you know, like, she was embarrassed, and, you know, and it's like being a 14-year-old in a 14-year-old body, and the other individuals like their age, you know, because he picked us up as our age. We weren't age regressed, you know, that, you know, or age increased, or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's like we weren't put in clone bodies at the same age. You know, it was like we were in our original bodies, and he picked us up and used, you know, had used our activation codes. And I don't know how he activated her either, you know, because it's like he barely could figure out how to activate me, and she was on the ship before I was. So I'm like, you know, so we were talking back and forth, and I tried to explain, like, does he understand that I've been in multiple different factions, and that I'm not just, you know, a good person, like, I've worked with the enemy, you know, I've, and all that stuff, and explained, like, what the enemy will do to us if we try to attack them, you know. And it was, so I'm having this conversation, and it's not private, it's like right there, and we're all three like, she walked around, and like, we're all three in the middle of standing here conversating about this. And then he was like, in the middle of this conversation, he's like, well, we're here. And I'm like, what? So like, John's sitting there, and he's like, what do you mean we're here?
Yeah, you've
like, I didn't say I was going to do this yet.
This whole time.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, are you serious? Like, why? What's wrong with you? Like, so, you know, John just decided, okay, we're in this shit. Let's figure out what to do. You know, so we were over the planet, you know, in the planetary atmosphere, not like close, but like still in space, you know. And he's standing there, and he's like, okay, you know, he starts wargaming everything. You know, he knows that we can't just do a full-on invasion, because we only have 2 ships and very little, you know. He just starts going line by line of what we have, so he knows what we had the capacity to do. So eventually, you know, he's like, okay, he figures out what he's going to do. So the altar that, you know, from Nacht Waffen, he knows about. He has all their memories as well. So he sits there and he goes, yeah, it's crazy. And I remember that. And he's like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. He goes, we're going to call them up and bring them on board, whoever's doing the invasion, which happened to be, which at the time I didn't know, and neither did John at the time, but it was the Merchant Marine Fleet. They were doing a full-on invasion of this planet and enslaving the entire planet.
They're noted for that.
Yeah. And he didn't know who they were.
The public needs to know the Merchant Marine is noted for enslaving entire worlds and selling them to ICC to become cyborgs.
Yeah, and like, these beings, I think, were like, at first, John thought that they were human. He didn't even know that they weren't human. They were humanoid, but they weren't human. So like, that was a shock to him after everything was said and done anyways, you know, because, you know, from his perspective, we didn't mingle with other beings like that from his time serving. So, you know, he was like shocked at that that whole situation. But I'll get in that later. But anyway, so he's like,
the Germans don't mingle with others. They have their own areas. That's a big misconception that a couple of whistleblowers have in their personal lives interacted with mostly reptilians. And they've been very loud about it. So everybody thinks that all of the humans out there are having sex with all these ETs, and the truth of the matter is we're not.
Yeah.
Not it's being forced on each other rather than outside.
Yeah.
And at least if you're in the military, you're not allowed to have kids.
But yeah, so it's like he was sitting there and he's like wargaming. He's like, okay, bring him on the ship. So he devised a plan where he was going to basically alter his memories because he's extremely telepathic and psionic, So he's like, I'm going to change my memories from what I remember being aboard that ship with you and how you were doing what you were doing with the planets. He made it out like that was him. So he altered his own memories and like.
So what was he doing? Taking off with my abilities?
Yeah. Yeah, he was acting as if it was him who blew up those planets, and basically trying to erase
did
you from.
Did he end up on the floor too?
No.
Because that's what happened when I blew
Yeah.
up a planet. Was
Yeah.
it would take all of my chi and I would be on the floor
On the
for
floor.
a while.
Yeah. See, he didn't show him those like the entirety of it. He just showed that he was standing there and then the planet was destroyed. So what had happened was is this like how you would send images to those individuals on the planet to let them know what was going to happen and stuff, and what showed images of what we did or what they did, that alter and your alter did to other planets, you under orders and whatever, that's basically the ability that he used. He used his telepathy to send images into the mind of the individual that came aboard.
Okay. So he was using images and not stealing my ability.
Yeah, exactly. It was just images. Like he was just portraying like it was his ability.
So he was doing a propaganda campaign.
Yes. I mean, what do you do when you're outnumbered? You got to work with what you got to scare the enemy, So
how is it that they put it? If you can't do it right, baffle them with bullshit.
Exactly. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, so they board the ship, we hail them, they board the ship. My son is freaking out because he's like, we're gonna let them come on the ship and da. And I'm like, yes, this, we have to do what we have to do. And he sits there and it's a Draco, a warrior Draco, that works in the Merchant Marine fleet. And he boards the ship and we start talking back and forth, somewhat talking and then somewhat telepathy. It was like a mixture, and I just let him know, listen, I have these individuals because he named them. So I told him the names of, his wife and children. And I was like, I want to buy them. Right. So he sits there and tells them that I want to buy them, but if you don't give them to me, this is what I'm going to do to you. And then he sent him images of blowing those planets up. And this warrior class Draco is like, holy shit, like took a step back, because I mean, when you show that you can destroy planets like that, I mean, it scares whatever like a lot of beings can get scared. Like, it's not like they're just, unable to be afraid, so this Draco like steps back and is like, holy shit, like in his mind, like he didn't say holy shit, but basically the equivalent. And you could tell his facial features changed, because normally they can keep a straight face, like a poker face, but it's like his facial features changed. And I was like, listen, I'll send you whatever resources you need. Just contact Nacht Waffen.
Oh God.
Yeah. He's like, contact Nacht Waffen and, we'll send you whatever resources you want for them. But if you don't, I'll blow the planet up with all of you on it. And then it won't matter, will it? And that freaked him the fuck out. So he was like, so you can pay. I was like, yeah, So I was like, just bring them aboard and then, contact Nacht Waffen and they'll pay whatever you want. So this being goes back on the ship.
So Nacht Waffen had to pay for your bluff.
And here's what happened. So after they brought them aboard, in the process of that, like I was like, go ahead and contact them and get aboard your ship and leave. So they trusted they believed what I said that was going to happen. So they got on their ship and went back, started heading back to the planet, and we're in the process of doing whatever they were doing. So not only was John just shocked at seeing that the beings that he saved that he thought were humans weren't humans, in the middle of that, he was like, whoa, what's going on? Because like they're human hybrids. They weren't even fully human. They were like blue beings. I mean, there's been images of them online and stuff, but they look like humanoids.
There are a lot of different species out there that are in the humanoid category. And well, who are the blue ones? And I'm like, which blue ones?
Yeah.
And they think
Exactly.
I'm being stupid, and it's like there are 300 species that are blue humans, and they come in
That we know about.
That we know about, and they come from 3 feet tall to 20 feet tall. So which ones are you talking about?
Like these ones, I think were like the same, like height of a human almost, yeah,
So
like an average human.
Approximately 6 foot.
Yeah, give or take.
Okay.
The children were like, they were like the height of a little child, you know what I mean? And there was quite a few of them, and I was like stuck, and they were like, they were calling me like grandpa and stuff. I'm like, what? They'd never met me before. It's just they finally got to meet me. But right after that, I snapped back in and realized, what I needed to do. So I looked over at my son, and I was like, now that they're on the ship, he was like, blow the ship up. And he was like, what? I was like, blow the ship up. He was like, what do you mean? I was like, blow their ship up. Nacht Waffen isn't going to pay them, and they're going to come after us. Blow their ship up.
Pretty much.
So, yeah. So he contacted
and hope that they did not contact their home base.
Exactly. So we on the ship that I was on, we didn't have weaponry on that ship, but his stepfather did. So his stepfather was like, you want me to? I was like, yes. I was like, blow their ship up now. Do it immediately now. So he blew their ship up. After that, I told him, I was like, all right, now erase all my fucking memories of this, put me back where you got me, and let's just hope that nobody finds out, And I was like, I told him, pour out my memories, pour them out. Do your best to make sure that I don't remember shit, because John understood how that shit worked and how they could come and pick you up and fucking go through your mind and take all those memories out and find out what you did. So he's not stupid. He was very intelligent when it came to that stuff.
If the Draco decide to take your testimony, they can get it in spite of all of the mind wipe.
That is true. Yes. He was just hoping for the best, now, so what had happened is after that, like he ended up having conversations, spending some time with them, getting to know a little bit about them on the way back. Right. But before we got the chance to actually fully leave, the admiral that was over the ship that I served on as an officer showed up on board the ship. They boarded the ship. They basically force boarded the ship. We couldn't get away. And he came on with a few other soldiers. And they basically came aboard, and he was stunned. Like he was there because he knew that my son had, broken the laws, what laws they had. And
what laws they had. Okay.
But was just stunned when he saw me. And I was like, hello. I was like, hello, Admiral, and like, because John had respect for him, he served under him and, fought fought with him and stuff in battles and things. So he sat there and he was like, hello, Admiral. And like, the Admiral was like, John, what are you doing here? Like, he was like, what are you doing here? And I started telling him what happened. And I was like, I mean, he already knew for the most part. It's just, he was kind of shocked seeing me like in that moment, because he didn't know what my son was up to at the time. He was trying to figure it out. So like they boarded the ship to arrest him for like basically just dipping out from his duty, and then found out that he stole my activation codes. On top of just disappearing from his station,
So
And
dereliction of duty, theft of classified materials, and totally going not only AWOL but doing a unauthorized event mission.
yes,
He was in deep shit.
yeah. So as I've said, John has morals, but he also has order. So he believes in law and order. And if you break the law, you have to pay the price.
Well, I keep
So,
telling people I can't do the time, so I'm not doing the crime. And
right. And
that's the same mindset.
so the admiral understood that I was taken and was like, you can't really arrest me for what I did, because it wasn't like, you know,
You were abducted. You were under duress.
yeah, but it was like my son, on the other hand, he was looking at me and like as if I was going to save him from this. And I told him, I told him exactly that. You commit the crime, you do the time.
Mm-hmm.
Your wife and kids are safe. Go do what you have to do. And he was just shocked. And I was just like, what
it is, dude.
Yeah, and I felt bad. Like, it wasn't like John was happy to do that, but it was like, you broke the law. So, and so they arrested him, and he told the admiral, he's like, look, he's like, I know you weren't, he's like, I know I wasn't going to get paid out for my service, because he remembered that situation when he was being re-enlisted, and like they were trying to re-enlist him, and how they were talking about the money, and how he found out when he read that recruiter's mind that it was bullshit in that office.
Bullshit.
And
they do their best to make sure that we have a suck-ass life here.
Yeah, and so he told him flat out, he's like, Admiral, like, and the admiral almost didn't seem like he knew that, because I've contacted this admiral in real time, okay, and he doesn't remember anything that I've talked about. I got a hold of his information, where he lives. Yes. The individual I've told you, which is Vernon E. Clark, which is the admiral, which is an actual admiral, was in the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
He's an actual one, yeah.
Yeah. So he has clones too, and alters. Welcome to it, I mean.
You expected it to just be us, the flunkies?
Well, no, when I first called him, I thought that, like, I called him to tell him that, I forgive him for what happened and stuff. That's literally what I started with. And he was like, what?
And they didn't come lock you up?
No. Like, I mean, we had a conversation. I started telling him about stuff, and he was like, look, either you're pulling my chain or you're high. And I was like, I'm neither. I was like, that remote viewing exists. And he openly admitted that he knows that is a real thing. So, but he didn't remember, and he legitimately doesn't, because in other timelines, I've brought him aboard that ship that I talked about, and he gets to see his clone in person and is like shocked, right?
Of course.
And he's just like,
and that blows the minds of all of these time travel people who think that if you see yourself in time travel, that you'll create an anomaly and the whole world will be destroyed. That's bullshit.
Yeah, that's just TV bullshit. Realistically, you'll see them, you'll be just as shocked as your other clone will be normally, unless you've already been pre-warned about it. And even then, you're still going to be in shock, because you're seeing yourself, you know, and you don't have their memories either. So it's like, you don't know who this person is, but it has your face and some of your mannerisms. Not completely, but still,
Yeah. And in my case, sometimes they're speaking another language that you don't understand.
Yeah. So it's like, it was a trip watching that in other timelines when I did certain things, that were tactical. But he was on the ship, and I told him, look, we're not getting paid. I didn't get paid out, and he knew that I was telling the truth. Like, he didn't believe it at first, but I told him the truth. Like, we're really not getting fucking paid for our service. I was like, so, I asked him, for my service and the loyalty that I had, that if he would take it easy on my son, and like try to lessen his sentence. Like, John isn't heartless,
Yeah.
But so, and the admiral was like, basically told him, we'll figure something out, He was like, he's gonna have to serve time, but you know,
he's
so I
gonna
mean,
have to do an extra 20 and back, or 3 or 4.
but I mean, this kid, like this kid was born on the ship, you know, on the same ship that I served on. Uh, a lot of the officer class, they have kids that are on the ship, but you don't get to interact with them normally. It's a real rarity. You get to actually see them once like, right. I'll go on that in a second, but so it's like they took him away, and his wife and kids basically took me back to where I came from. They deactivated me and everything like that, put me to sleep, you know, and like did the things that they did, and they brought me back, you know, and I remember being dropped off as me, looking up, and the ship's sitting there hovering, and I could see through the windows, and it's them, and they're waving at me, you know, saying
Mhm.
goodbye. And it was like this woman and her kids, which are like, I guess, my stepdaughter and, or not stepdaughter, but daughter-in-law and
Daughter-in-law.
grandkids, you know, going from the perspective of marriage or whatever, from the human perspective. I don't really know the whole thing. I mean, he called her his wife, so, you know, uh, so it's like they were really loving and kind, and I could feel that even when I conversated with them. I think that was probably the best alien interactions I had, other than when I was serving in the Ashtar Command, you know, and it was quite surprising to me, you know, because I was standing there and they literally stayed to wave at me, and I'm like, "Who are you?" Like, I'm sitting there waving back, like, "Who are they?" But it didn't feel any negativity from them. I felt love
Yeah.
and happiness, you know, and they floated off, and I just walked. I don't know what it was. I just walked back into the trailer, you know, didn't even think about it. Like, it was so weird. Then the next day happened, and it was morning time, and um, or midday or something, and I walked outside, and all of a sudden I blacked out,
Oh, fun. I hate those.
and then I woke up.
You're out doing your stuff and you just flop.
Yeah, I mean, I'm this kid on this big ass property. It's the middle of the desert. The closest neighbor is like 7 or 8 acres away, and there's no kids to play with. So I've always been there by myself, you know. Other than, you know, my mom, she's off working.
Mhm.
You know, you know, my mom was a single mom at that point. She was off working. My you know, my stepdad wasn't around. I mean, he had his own property. I just didn't have anything to do with him, so I was there by myself, you know. And normally at that point, I had stopped going to school, you know, because I was ditching so much, and I just got tired of being bullied, and, you know, I just stopped going. And you know, after I got returned, they like dumbed me down. You know, I got less intelligent almost. You know, like I wasn't able to sit there and like do certain things that I normally would be able to do. And like my memory, because I used to have an eidetic memory before I got picked up,
Mhm.
you know, and went to space. Like, I could remember names and faces, and I mean everything. I
Yeah.
mean, if I saw you, I knew you.
I
Now it's
have
even harder for me.
I have trouble with if it's someone that I knew in space, I will know that I know you, but I can't place your face. I don't know your name. I don't know the context. It's just I know you.
Yeah. See, and I get that, but it's like a lot too, you know. And normally it comes with pain in my head, and I think that's
Oh
from
God.
originally that was from, I think, the Omega programming. But it's like, because that's where they put the things to shock me when they were trying
Mhm.
to, you know, create that program.
Well, with the Omega programming, I just see red, like tomato soup red. And if I stay in that mode too long, I will just black out. And every altar I have has Omega programming. So it gets to be interesting to figure out which one is causing it this time.
That's interesting. That's an interesting thing. I never knew that. Like, I know that I have an Omega program, and I know that it's like my kid, like when I was a kid, when they were breaking me and reprogramming me. And like, ever since I realized, and like I could feel him inside of my mind, like I hugged him, you know, and try to embrace them with love, and that stopped the pain from happening. Now I just get like a ping when I see somebody I recognize.
I had, I have interaction with the guardians, and I was shocked too many times with energy beams, and I was in really bad shape. And this one group of mantids owed me a favor. And the guardians literally grabbed these folks and said, she isn't calling in your favor, we are, because she's gonna die. And while they were fixing the burns, they went through, it was a group of mantids and a group of Arcturians working together. And boy, howdy, is that a fun party, not. And they spent 4 months going through all of my altars and disengaging the Omega programming. And it was like, well, we're going to change your memories. No, you're not. But they hurt you. So what? I need them. And it's, well, we're going to process them so that they're like processed memories and you're not as upset by them. And I said, you don't touch the memories. And they said, too bad, we've done it. So it was like, I'm like, you assholes. This was
like
what, 2017?
What was the point of the conversation if you're just going to do it anyways? Like,
well, they didn't erase anything and they didn't change the outcomes or anything.
They just try to make it easier.
The memories are still there. They just don't, I'm just not sitting and crying all the time anymore. So, okay.
See, that still happens to me. Like, I still bawl my eyes out when I have, especially recently, like I've had a lot more of my darker altars come to surface and those memories, and they're horrendous. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I'm totally like the opposite of them. I'm like in shock that I would even be put to in a position to do things like that. Different people, multiple different people. I mean, especially in the community. I mean, that we're in. I mean, in space, a lot of my altars were horrendous, and I'm like, Jesus, man.
Yeah, the altars that I have that serve on Earth have been some of the most god-awful people. I have flashbacks and bleedovers and times I'm piggybacking, and I have altars who are assassins. And it's like, I'm watching what's being done in my body.
In horror, yeah.
In absolute, oh my God. And I cannot stop it. I have no control over the actions. And I'm sitting there telling Lou about it when I'm back here and in charge. And Lou has to act like my confessor. He knows all the details that I haven't made public, and it's like, you get to where that you stop crying because it's like the tears themselves dry up. You've cried so much. I started crying in 2013, and I still cry maybe twice a week, but at least it's not all day, every day anymore.
Well, it's like, so, I mean, before I was dropped off, like I was having a conversation with that woman, and, they're really like this altar and that altar are like really intimate. And he wanted to, John told her flat out, I'm going to come look for you, and she talked about stuff with him that was her own personal life at the time. And so when I was brought back, it was like before I was picked up by this group, that night when I walked back into the trailer, okay, my alter John.
You're still like 14, 15 years old.
Yeah, this was before I got picked up by the Merchant Marine Fleet, right? So before I blacked out, that night when I walked back in the trailer after I waved at these beings and was like, okay, you know, I just walked back into this trailer that I lived in, and all of a sudden I started getting flashes of memories from what I know now as John and his alter, and he was basically trying to force all of his memories into my head and trying to take over my body.
Fun, not.
So I had flashes of just a bunch of different memories. Earth being hit by the sun, like a major sunburst, and it, that whole stuff that I talked about.
I think that,
and I'll go into that, but
I think that particular outcome has been blocked.
Yes, it has. It was just so in all these programs, I remember all the people's faces. I just don't have names to put with faces so I can put them out in public. The ones that I do, the ones that I track down, I put out in public, like the Joint Chiefs of Staff, like, when I found, the mall that I was trained at as a kid, which is Randall Park Mall, that's been destroyed at this point, with the art, the stuff that I put together in that group that we're in, that you run, right, that you're an admin of.
Civilization, I put that out there. What I call that.
Yeah.
It's got this big long name and it's a secret group, and the last word is civilization, so that's what I call it.
Okay. But anyways, like, there's only one person so far, and he was standing in the shadows where I couldn't see his face, but he's not covered in shadow like most people see, so if I don't have the name to put their face on there, 99% of the time, I, like, with the photos that I put together, I shadow out their face because, they're not, I don't want people to think that they're that person, that I post, because I mean, I don't want just random people getting like harassed, that have no part of anything.
And we do get harassed. Yeah.
So beyond that, it's like, so I remember the faces. He was standing in the shadow, and this person was high up in Solar Warden, and is one of the individuals that knows how the programs work, understands that they're not perfect, and is basically working within the reins of it. Knows that we do fucked up evil shit, but that most of it has a good purpose. Not all of it, but the core of it, the core reason why it was put together. And that person, I don't have their face.
I don't know that any of these programs are actually positive.
Exactly.
I don't know that any of them are positive at their core. The American programs, as far as I can tell, were developed simply to take World War II back into space. And that's a pretty suck-ass reason to be kidnapping kids from their bed.
I just know, like, from the way that the conversation I was in with that individual, it dealt with, they showed me the solar flare. I got to physically see it in space right in front of me. And, not only that, but emotionally and telepathically hear and feel people dying in mass on the planet, especially my loved ones. I could hear them crying out in my head. In massive numbers. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen. And that's why, with John, like, when he served in Solar Warden, he's at that point, because it was like he didn't want to serve. But when he saw that, that's when he basically swore his bloodline,
was he told that Solar Warden was what created that flash?
No, it was like he watched the sun.
That's part of the Wingmaker's information, is that Solar Warden is using the sun as a fuel depot, and it's unbalancing things, and that their activity is what caused the flash. And
really?
Yeah, that's been information available for decades that Solar Warden is actually behind the solar flash. And that had to be actively stopped to put an end to it. So this is part of why I don't trust Solar Warden, is because there's other older information that people are not even bothering to read. You know, before you go into, okay, because my memories were in German, I had to do all this research. So I've read all the stuff from the 1900s, all the way back to Michael Ralph, before Bill Cooper, before all of those people. There were things that were reported in the 1800s. And there are newspaper clippings all over the country about them. So, you know, there's over 100, close to 150 years worth of stuff that's available in print, and most of it's available online. And most people in our community think everything started with Gaia TV. And I'm sitting here going, you know, if you do your homework, you would know better than that shit. So yeah, the wing
not happy.
The wing makers said that the sun was being used as a fuel depot, and okay, there was a timeline created, and the wing makers were from that timeline, and they came back in time, created the ancient arrow cave with all of this artwork in it to tell the people that created the timeline that this was going to happen and it needed to be stopped. And I know the people who made the timeline, and they not only stopped it there in that timeline, but in ours as well.
See,
so
in
there
that
won't
memory,
be a solar flash now.
yeah, in that memory, that individual that was standing there talking to him was telling him, you know, after it happened, that this wouldn't happen because that's what they're there to do, is stop that from happening. So, like, hearing
They're
that, I don't remember ever being
credit for something that they didn't do. In fact, they caused the flash. Doesn't that sound like doesn't that sound like the military?
Yeah, I mean, look, like John knows that Solar Warden isn't good, you know, but like that's something that is new to him. I've even in other timelines I haven't heard that before. That's
new information.
I don't know, that
supposedly new information that I got from the wing makers.
Yeah, that hurts my head when you started talking about that. He's not
happy.
The subject. Huh?
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so he started showing me flashes of different things, you know, like when he was being re-recruited for Solar Warden, like he didn't want to be re-recruited. Like he was going to sign the paper, but he couldn't read the paperwork, the documents that they put in front of him. He couldn't really read, which threw him off and made him think. And then he's like, "What's going on? Why can't I read these?" You know. And then he looked into the recruiter's mind in these memories, right? So, I mean, I'll go through them in a second, but mainly just to cover the basis, he started sending all these images through my head. And he was trying to basically force all of his memories into my mind and basically try to force me into the background so that he could take full control of my body. Because he was on a mission, and his mission was to find the woman that he loved. And he promised her that he was going to do it, so he was going to do it. And in the process of that, he was talking to me in my mind. And he was telling me, "Look, I was like, what do you, I started screaming in pain because it was painful. Like I was standing up and like almost falling over and collapsing in the process of this happening. And then it was like he didn't start talking until that altar that one of my other negative altars started saying, hey, basically came forward and started showing me images of you and the ship we were on. And he was basically like, hey, go ahead and do whatever you two have to do. But once you guys are done and you guys get weak, I'm going to take over myself. And
oh, goody.
Yeah. And I'm like, who are you two? I'm like, what is this? So I'm like going through being myself and having all these flashes of memories, not knowing what, basically being told that they were all but going to kill me and take over my body. And I'm like, and then I had another altar that was, that is like a future self of me, basically, that traveled with the Ashtar Command, and basically came to the forefront and was like, I'm not going to let any of you out. And if any of you two come out, I'll kill this body before that happens. And I was like, whoa, I was like, stop, just both stop, and John is one of my strongest altars. Joseph from, that served in Solar Warden, which is myself, like I served as me. I just had abilities and stuff that they allowed me to have, and they allowed me to, mature and strengthen in with my travels with them. But I was like, John was at the forefront of doing this shit. So I was like, listen, man, I'll find this person that you want to find. Just don't kill me. Just like, stop, you're going to kill us both, and I basically talked him into letting me live, and that I would find this person for him. And, he gave me a name of where she was located, but it was like, it wasn't the proper way of saying it, like, unless you live there, right? So like, if you live there, some of the people that live in that area will say, the name of the town the way that John told them, but the actual name is different. So it was weird because I got the name and I knew the exact name of this, I knew what this person looked like, and I he gave me the void of his feelings, like the emptiness that he had because that person wasn't there. So in the middle of all that, he finally decided to step back, and when he did, everything was good for the most part. It's just I was losing my shit as me. So that other future self of me basically took over, and I started meditating, and like I never knew how to meditate before, so that was awkward to me, and like I've discussed that in the last interview and stuff, I think, but in short. But it was like I was able to put my mind back together doing him doing what he did, and he, like I said, he compartmentalized those other altars and basically allowed me to take back my body fully. And after that, I just compartmentalized everything mentally and just was like, I didn't understand the space stuff. I knew that I was being taken as a kid being trained because I had those memories and it was real, and I was still being picked up from my home. They would try to put me in like a state of mind where I would just be like a drone trying to walk, to get into the van and stuff. But I would flash out and be able to like take over and see what was going on around me and interact with what was going on. That I understood. It was the space stuff that freaked me out and I didn't get. I thought it was just dreams of some sort until I saw Jace Rice's stuff, and then I was like, holy shit, this shit's real, like then the pieces started falling in place for me. But after that had happened, the next day, like it was midday after I had already been trancing out, and that's when I was picked up. I was taken just straight up out of my soul was just taken out of my body at that point. And I was taken in and put into a clone, and that's when this other thing that I've talked about publicly started to begin. But then I had walked outside later after all that stuff happened, because that was a part of a deal that I made. I walked outside and then I blacked out. When I blacked out, I woke up and I was laying on this bed. Okay. And this is where the Merchant Marine Fleet stuff came in. Basically, they tracked those individuals that were on the ship were able to be regenerated. They have time capability, so they went back in time and grabbed those individuals, and made sure that they survived. And those
We call that redialing.
Yeah, that Draco was pissed. He was pissed. But they were able to track me down. And yeah, and it was like there was two Greys. I was laying on a bed, and they were talking to me, and they were like, "We just want to know," they were trying to find out who I was, what I've done, because of what I did. And they worked for the Merchant Marine Fleet, and they were really obtrusive. They were not very kind on any level. I've met Greys, like when I was put in the service with Solar Warden, I met Greys that were like, lay back, it's going to be hard. You're going to feel like you can't breathe, but no, these ones were like, we're going to find, like they were there. They were intrusive. They hurt me in the process. They were not nice on any level. And they were just,
most of the navigators in all of the factions are either Greys or Draco. To find a human with that capability is very, very rare. And that's why my space alters are mostly navigators, because it's such a rare capability that they don't want to waste it. But Kruger has me as a ground thumper.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I served in Solar Warden, when I was an officer on the destroyer ship that I was on, we didn't have any aliens on the ship that I was on. It was all humans. But there are Greys that do work for them, and that's what I was explaining before. Like when I got brought into Solar Warden, like as a kid, when they cryogenically froze me and put me in a clone body, like there were Greys that were there. I mean, Tony's talked about it in other interviews with, not with Solar Warden, but like the process that I was put in, where you were put in this bag and then they sat there and like zipped it up and then you couldn't breathe and they cut a hole and like put this, this thing so you could breathe and stuff. Like that really happened. And like that blew my mind when you said that,
what
that just added to those memories.
Is the machine that is used to time travel us back looks just like an MRI machine. So every time I have an MRI, I go into a full-blown panic attack, and they have to use Valium on me.
I started having like issues with my mind, like pain in my head, and I had an alter come to surface and took me to a clinic where they had an MRI machine, and I never paid for this doctor bill. I got in there without giving my name, and the doctor that did the MRI was shocked when he saw that I was using both sides of my brain, like at the level I was. And when the MRI happened, I had memories leak through. But I can't remember the location. Like I see glimpses of it, but it's like I walked out because I broke the MRI machine. And the doctor's like, are you going to pay for this? It's like, I was like, no. I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, can I have a copy of that? And he was like, no.
Back in the 80s, I had my last kid in 84, and I had an incident in labor, and they kept telling me it's not a stroke, but I had to learn how to speak English all over again. And that's why I don't have my mama's Okie accent, is because I had to relearn English as an adult. And they found something on that first CAT scan. This was before MRIs. And they found that the two hemispheres of my brain are separated almost an inch apart, and they're supposed to be basically touching. And it freaked them out. So I was in my 30s when they found this. So I'm in my 60s now, and it was about 12, 15 years ago that my local doctor here sent me to a neurologist because I had an episode at work. And the doctor tells me, well, you have advanced cerebral atrophy. And he shows me the MRI that he had done. And he says, and I can put my thumb in between the two hemispheres. And you need to get your affairs in order because you're going to forget how to walk, forget how to talk, forget how to breathe, and then you're going to die. And it's going to happen within 5 years. Well, I'm still here. So the thing that I found doing research, and I ran across this by accident, there was a report about the astronauts who had gone through the G training in the spinner. You remember that? That when it was so they would be able to withstand G forces and not pass out right away like normals would. And they did tests on them afterwards and found that their brains were split like that too. And a separate report that I ran across said that this is used on MK survivors to prevent them from reintegrating alters.
Okay.
So my particular results that absolutely freaked out the doctors at what was then called Valley Medical Center in Fresno, it completely freaked them out. They had me doing a test every 3 months for a couple of years, and that's probably why my thyroid's dead, is because of the radioactive iodine that they used for a dye. But the more I think about it, the more it verifies my testimony, because having that particular brain pattern proves that I have been through the process used to prevent alter reintegration.
Mm-hmm. See, like I just recently found out that like the thing that goes right here in the between your brain isn't there for me. Like it's been removed. On top of like, I now know that I was put in the trip chair a lot and they used a lot of chemicals in my brain, and I have a lot of holes in my brain from those chemicals that they used. So that's
They
been
were not nice to us.
That's been something new that recently came when I did it. Because okay, so there's this individual that does DNA ICUCs and stuff. I think you've heard of him for sure. What's his name? I can't remember off the top of my head right now. I'm drawing a blank. That's horrible. Jay Essex.
Oh, I've heard of him. Yes.
Yes, he does DNA ICUCs and stuff. So he increased, like he altered my genetics. Like he's been in the process of altering my genetics, but he had gone through my brain and like I could feel him energetically messing around in my head, you know, trying to do what he's doing. And he started telling me this stuff, and I'm like, you know, what, you know, and then he, you know, there were times where when I was being put in the trip chair where they do have a Commander Ashtar, but it's just a title, not an actual individual. So when you're going through the trip share, they sit there and they come in and they're known as Commander Ashtar, but they're at different generals that come through. And he said that I've been put in the trip share minimum of 20 times, and that they were very ruthless to me. Like my body would flop around and stuff, and they would just be like, put them back in, you know. So I don't know. It's just
they're not very protective of their assets.
Right. I mean, I get to whatever the level is of these other beings that are in space, you know, to feel a solace of, you know, some kind of feeling of safety. To get to their level, they had to do some fucked up shit. I can understand that.
Well, that's why the Germans drink the black goo, is to bring themselves to the same level as the ETs, because they were being taken advantage of.
Yeah, and I get that, you know, and I understand that there are threats out there, great fucking threats that people can't even comprehend at this point.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys out there that are they're just living their lives, and They're smarter than we are, and they think of us like we would an ape.
Yeah.
And they'll leave us alone because we're apes. There's nothing they can work with us about. But there are others out there that Earth is this jewel in space, and all they're waiting for is an invitation to come here and take it from us.
Yeah.
And once we are stupid enough to give the invitation, it would take a bloody war to get rid of them. And whenever people start talking about, well, if they were going to destroy us, they would have already. They don't understand. I've talked about the Guardians. The Guardians protect Earth from any advanced race coming in and doing anything to us, except the Anunnaki, who created us, and the Draco, who are the rulers of the Anunnaki. And those two races are here no matter what we do. And if we try to rebel against the Draco, I've seen what happens to those worlds. There's a movie by Dust Studios that's called Raka. And they should watch that because that's very realistic.
I've seen that. Yeah. But
yeah, I've listened to a lot
it's
of people
gonna take
tell me a lot of new age bullshit, and I go, watch Raka. I have been involved in that.
Mhm.
I know that is what will happen to us if we revolt at all.
Yeah,
And like you were saying about what John said, you come a point where you have no ability to fight. So starting a fuss is kind of stupid and suicidal.
Yeah. I mean, even with what we talked about in the last interview, like with the Draco that showed up, like I know where they show up at that point, and we show up and counter them, which surprises them to begin with. But it's because of past timelines that I was in where we had that intel, and that intel leaked through into this time, like into the timelines I was in. So it's like even taking that armada out that I told you about, that you remember and have seen, obviously, or are seeing come through, like on its way here and stuff.
Yeah,
in the process
I've seen the armada on its way here. I'm also aware that the Guardians have a base on Saturn, and they have a time bubble off Saturn in orbit, and in the time bubble they have a court for this solar system and regions. And so if anyone comes here to invade, they will be met by the Guardians.
Yeah, I remember like once we build enough ships, like yes, the ICC and the Nacht Waffen will be fighting each other, which is good for us as humans, from my perspective, because if you're going to take out an enemy, it's better to have your enemies fight one another so that you can come in and finish up the job on your own behalf. But I know that we do head off.
Just wanted to be left alone, and
yeah.
So them being attacked,
I get
kind of ridiculous.
I get that they're colonies.
ICC is just money.
I get that they have colonies and that they want to survive, but I mean the atrocities that they have committed against us, whether people want to admit that or not, kidnapping us as children and using us in these programs and having us kill people on their behalf.
I was kidnapped by the Germans.
Well, you might not have been, but I was.
I was kidnapped by the American government.
Yeah, and I mean the Americans do that too. And that's why, like, I've come out and I've told people, I mean, this stuff just has to stop, period, from all sides. And they're not going to stop.
There's nothing that we do out there that cannot be done by consenting adults. They have to stop the goddamn kidnapping kids.
Yes, and but they're not going to stop without bloodshed. They're just not.
And the American government was who kidnapped my generation, period.
Yes, of course. But they all,
as far as I know, every generation since.
Yeah. But
we have 5 more minutes. There's a show on after ours.
For sure, for
Ramona
sure.
Speaks the Other Truth. And if you have anything that you want to plug, like where people can get you, you need to say that now.
Okay. All right. Anyways, yeah. I mean, you can find me on Facebook. So like, if you remember me and you want to talk, you can talk to me on Facebook Messenger and stuff. I do have a YouTube channel. It's under my same name. This is just other than my middle name, which is Joseph Powell. And I mean, you can find me on a bunch of different platforms at this point. I'm not really active on anything other than Facebook from time to time. But I don't mind talking and helping people. Like if they remember something, like I'll help you out if I can. You know, um, some things people remember, I still don't remember. It's like with you with solar warden and stuff. So it's the same situation for some things, because I've had people come to me and ask me if I remember them, and they slightly remember me and stuff, and it's just, I'm like, what? I just draw a blank.
Yeah.
But like I said already in other interviews, just try to integrate. It's not going to be an easy process, but this is the time to do it. Other than that, thank you for letting me come on, Penny.
Well, thank you for coming. With my reintegration, I work with an Iroquois shaman. Native American soul fragment retrieval is the only thing that I've found that consistently works. And then you have to sit with the memories, and when you reintegrate the altar, their actions become your actions. And then you have to deal with what you did and the inevitable guilt that comes with it.
Yeah.
So forgiving ourselves is the hardest part. And then dealing with all the other people who were out there or heard our story and don't want to forgive us.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you very much for coming, and
Thank you.
I'm going to end the show now. Daryl, it's that time. So if you're listening on the server, Ramona Speaks the Other Truth will be at the top of the hour. Thank you very much.
Recording stopped.
I think we're still on air, so I'm going to leave and leave it to the next show.
All right. Thank you.